I will call this Lake Mill City Council meeting to order for March 19th of 2024. Misty, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Curler?
Here.
Mr. Waters?
Here.
Mrs. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Quedno?
Here.
Mr. Fields?
Here.
Thank you.
Please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item on our agenda is Councilmember Board reports and acceptance of meeting minutes. We've got quite a few minutes, so I'll just list them. City Council meeting minutes from March 5th, Parks Board meeting minutes from December 20th of last year and January 27th of this year. We have meeting minutes from the Ad Hoc Committee on Urban Forest Management from January, Public Works Board meeting minutes from December of last year and February of this year, and then we have Housing Authority meeting minutes from September 2023 to January 2024. Are there any questions on the minutes or any members that would like to highlight anything in the reports? Mr. Waters.
Yeah, I guess real quickly, the Public Works meeting in February did not meet quorum. So that was discussed in our meeting in March and decided to change that meeting back to the second Tuesdays. So there is a change in that to hopefully help with the quorum situation.
Great, thank you for that update. I'll also just mention for the Housing Authority, which is really sort of an independent body, but I know that they always send their meeting minutes for us. If you read through those, you'll see that the Executive Director, Steve Pierce, is retiring. And so the Housing Authority Board is in the process of hiring his replacement right now. So we'll have someone new running that Rock Lake Manor moving forward. Any other questions or comments on the reports, on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll accept all of those into our record. And our next item is the Joint Rock Lake Committee monthly report. And we have Kevin Lehner here tonight to give us that report.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Kevin Lehner, and I am a member of the Joint Rock Lake Committee, and I am here representing Wendy, and have just a couple of items here. Number one, we don't have approved minutes from the January meeting. Our February meeting was canceled due to the weather and lack of a quorum. So, number two, we continue to stay connected with the County Land and Water Conservation Department as well as the Rock Lake Improvement Association. Both provide reports to our meeting when possible, okay? Number three, we have added the development of a Lake District update to our regular agenda. Number four, we had a discussion on the seawall letter, and the way I understand it, DNR issued a letter to riparian owners who have seawalls, informing them of their, responsibilities under state law. That's what that was about. We had a conversation about that. We discussed the updated dam management policy, and we're going to prepare an article for the Lake Mills Leader to help the public understand what is being done. Now that the updated policy has been released and we've had an opportunity to look at it, I think we want to have a conversation about, does it actually address the recommendation that we made to the council in our report, and if so, great. If not, do we want to take some other steps with regard to how to address that? Okay. Number six, the presentation regarding the Rock Lake groundwater was discussed at our last meeting with Colin Hutchinson, County Land and Water Conservation Department. Number seven, our 2024 priorities will continue to focus on education and aquatic invasive species, Number 8, Colton Hutchinson will present on the vegetation in the mill pond at our next meeting. Number 9, Joint Rock Lake Committee will have a representative at the Lake and River Conference in Stevens Point. Don't know what the date is on that, but I think it's going to be sometime in the next several weeks. And lastly, number 10, Joint Rock Lake Committee will attend other city and town committees as appropriate to stay informed on other projects by other committees. Wendy will identify the town committees, and Pat Stevens will identify the city committees, and we will decide on who will attend which and when. Okay?
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Lehner? Mr. Waters?
On the article on the dam for the newspaper, can you make sure that that gets approved by the staff? It's a kind of a complex issue, and just make sure that all the wording's proper before it goes out to the newspaper.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. Who did you want to approve it?
Forward it to Drake, Mr. Daly.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you say that?
Can you forward it to Mr. Daly, and he would make
Mr.
sure
Daly
that
approve it? Is that what
verify
you're,
it, yes.
that he will approve it? Even if that's coming from the Joint Rock Lake Committee, the city is going to approve what we put out? Is that right?
correct.
Is that how that?
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
And I was at the meeting the other night, and Eric Schreiner was there as well, and he offered to work with the committee on the article. So hopefully that will also make sure that accurately represents what the council adopted. So thank you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
I just said Mr. Schreiner was at your meeting the other night, and he offered to work with you on the article. So
Great.
that will help
Excellent.
ensure
That's
that,
fantastic.
that it's accurate and
Right,
yeah,
representative of all of the interested parties.
yes. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So our next agenda item is correspondence. Mrs. Bishop, would you like to go first?
Okay, I'm going to start with what I received on my desk when I came up. Misty, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe this is a correspondence related to a shoreline municipal code violation, so I received that. I received correspondence regarding the wastewater treatment plant, and the specific question was asking if the town was going to share in any of those costs. I received correspondence about the requirements for a council candidate. I received correspondence from Ms. Martin, who's actually here tonight, regarding the broadband regional workshop. So I think she signed up to speak. I will not steal her thunder on that if she wants to talk about it. And then I received an email from a Parks Board member regarding the mill pond and the assessments of the properties surrounding the mill pond.
Thank you. Mr. Fields?
I had similar correspondence with the shoreline notice that was given to us today. Also on the broadband, I did receive an email with questions about the city council vacancy. A couple emails on pipeline security training that's coming up, and elected officials focus group that's coming up here shortly also. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Waters?
Yes, I also got the legendary Lake Mills focus group scheduled tomorrow. I have a conflict, so I asked for the agenda. I haven't seen that yet, but hopefully that'll be available to the public. And then I had a chance to meet with the Lake Mills High School government class, 2 of those classes. It was very delightful. It was a wonderful hour and a half each session, and would encourage anyone on council, if they ever get an invite to do that, to do it. It was a joy. So very active group. They knew city government well. They knew the difference between city government, a mayor-led government, and a city manager-led government. So it was pretty delightful. So
Great. Thank you
Yeah.
for doing that.
Yeah.
Ms. Quedna?
I don't have really anything else to add besides what's been said. I didn't have as much correspondence as Catherine's exciting correspondence over there, but everybody else's is pretty much similar to what I received.
Okay, thank you. I received all the ones that are, I guess all the ones that I received are previously mentioned, except for I was copied on support for the Mill Pond dredging project. I received an inquiry about land for sale, wondering if the city council knew about it, and inquiring further with the individual. It's not in the city limits or in our extraterritorial zoning area, but so I was able to help him with that. And then I've had some correspondence about the Parks Board vacancy. Okay, so now we will move on to the question and public comment period of our agenda. So the public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comments may also be made at this time for items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state open meetings law discourages actions by the council on items that are not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address when sharing your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet provided at the podium. If there's anyone attending online, please type your name and address in the chat feature. So I saw one person go up to the podium and sign in ahead of time. I don't see anyone online, but if there's anyone like to speak, please step forward.
Thank you. Anita Martin, we live at 261 Pinnacle Drive in Lake Mills. Just a reminder, coming up soon, we do have the Clean Sweep Recycling event, which is Friday, April 5th, from 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., and Saturday, April 6th, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's at a different location than usual, so it's at the Jefferson County Parks Maintenance Facility, which is at 1555 South Industrial Drive in Jefferson. This is for any hazardous chemicals. It's also available for businesses, and the cost is $10 per vehicle, and then business waste goes according to weight. We are also taking tires of various different sizes, including if somebody has tractor tires. Those prices are based on the size of the tire. So registration is requested for that, to be calling at 920-674-7430 to register. And then, not to confuse things, but I do want to mention that is not an electronics or appliance recycle event. That's a separate event, which is Saturday, April 20th. So that's that. So please encourage people to bring their stuff. And then, this is not related to any of that, but we have a fun community event coming up on Monday, May 20th at the pharmacy. We're doing bingo from 6 until 8 p.m. This is a Monday night, and the benefit is for the Rotary, which provides different community functions throughout Lake Mills and surrounding areas. So it'll be fun. There will be prizes, and we're encouraging people to try to come out that night. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. I'll note that I ran into Anita last week, and she was dropping off some flyers from Jefferson County about the different recycling events. So those are also available here at City Hall. And I believe the city is having electronics recycling in June, so there's another opportunity locally for that. So thank you. Thank you for bringing those flyers. I appreciate it. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the city manager's report. Mr. Daly.
There's a number of items included in your packet. Our representative from Ryan Brothers is also here tonight if you have any questions for him. We did include some fire department specific EMS reports, so let me know if that's what you're hoping to see moving forward, or if there's any changes you'd like to see with those. I can pass that along to Chief Russ. I would also note that in-person absentee voting started today here at City Hall.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the city manager's report or any of the documents that we have? Mr. Waters.
On the tax settlement payments, can we touch on that a little bit? Thank you.
With the tax settlement, it's funding the taxing jurisdictions, the TIDs. So those are the tax settlement payments to TID 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and to the debt service fund, which is housed at the LGIP.
So those, we make payments to other governments around us in regards to those TIDs then? Is that where that comes from?
It's part of the tax increment that's brought in for 2023.
Okay.
The taxing jurisdictions are separate for Jefferson County, MATC, and the school district. Those are separate checks, separate settlements. This is just the TID districts.
So when I saw a payment going out of like $7.5 million, am I looking at that right?
Let me pull it up.
That was on the general fund
Correct.
check register.
That was in my head. It could be off a little bit, so.
3,230,535.79 was the settlement for the LGIP, which is the TID districts, and the debt service fund. The Lake Mills School District was the $2,764,076.28. And then Jefferson County and MATC are also in there.
So those are all related to the TID payments then?
Yes.
Okay.
No, not all of them.
Okay.
Just the local government investment pool is the city's TID funds.
Okay.
And that is the 5, 6 TIDs, and then seven TIDs, and then the debt service fund for $2 million. The majority of that is the debt service that we transfer to the LGIP, and then when debt payments are made from the general fund, I pull money back from that LGIP, but I put the full funding for the debt for the year in the account at the beginning of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Just to follow up, I think you've explained to us previously when there's money is sent to the local government investment pool, it's kind of just like going to a savings account or something. So you're storing it there, it earns some interest, and then it's being used later.
Correct. It's a higher interest-bearing accounts. February was at 5.34%. So once we finalize our February tax settlement, we send the money there, and then usually twice a year, like in June, I will pull back whatever we've paid for debt service for the TIDs also. And then in December, I will pull the remaining debt payments that were made from the general fund.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on any of the reports? Mr. Daly, you asked if the fire department data was what we were looking for. I appreciate getting all of that. My only thought would be, could it be put into one document rather than having to open all the separate ones? But yeah, the data, I think, is very helpful for us to see that data. Are there any questions for Mr. Letson since he's here this evening from Ryan Brothers? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Okay, then we will move on to council business. So our first item under council business, letter A, is Resolution 24-18 regarding intergovernmental agreements. So Misty, would you read that title for us?
City Council Resolution 24-18, resolution authorizing the city manager to submit and upon acceptance, execute intergovernmental agreements with the town of Jefferson, town of Koshkonong, and the town of Oakland for the provision of building inspection services.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to approve Resolution 24-18, authorizing the city manager to submit and upon acceptance execute the intergovernmental agreement with the town of Jefferson, towns of Jefferson, Koshkonong, and Oakland for the provision of building inspection services.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Bishop, seconded by Mr. Fields. So Drake, you want to tell us about this?
Sure. So these were 3 townships that reached out to Troy Evenson, our building inspector. They recently had their contracted service terminate the contract as they were they were consolidating their services. And so they reached out to us knowing that we have a building inspector that has every certification that you need in the state of Wisconsin in order to do every inspection and sign off on the plans. Troy has spoken to some of them. He took a look at their permit load, determined that there'd be no drop in service to the city of Lake Mills if he took these on, and that it would be a option for a revenue option for the city of Lake Mills, while also being efficient for the townships. So the agreement is 80% of the permit revenue would stay with the city, 20% would return to the townships, and then there's an hourly rate included as well if Troy was required to attend a town board meeting or another meeting of their municipality. This is the offer that, this is essentially an offer from the city to them. We're submitting it to them for consideration. It's not, this is what we believe we would need in order to make it worthwhile for the city to and take on this responsibility. So if the town boards choose not to take it or choose to go with another option, we don't intend to. This is kind of a take it or leave it option. This is what we would need in order to do this. There's a 90-day out clause in the agreement, so either party for any reason can exit with 90-day notice. Staff recommends approval. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Are there any questions? Mr. Waters?
You answered my first question about the resources and making sure that we have enough reserved here for the city. The second question I have would be the meeting times. Do you know if any of these municipalities happen to meet on the first, third, or fourth Tuesday, where our inspector normally would be attending those meetings from time to time?
Mm-hmm. Troy doesn't believe they do.
Okay.
City meetings would take precedence, so they'd have to schedule around that if it became an issue. But he has attended some of their town board meetings recently, and they haven't conflicted with any city meetings that he would be his attendance would be required at.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I had a question. I think we're in a enviable position of having a certified building inspector on our staff here in the city, and obviously there's a need out there for other communities. What would happen under, if we signed an intergovernmental agreement like this, and in the event, hopefully unlikely, but in the event that Troy would leave employment with the city, is that 90 days enough time, or what would happen in that circumstance to our obligations under the agreement?
Yeah, I think in that circumstance, we'd likely give notice upon notice of that Troy was leaving. And then if we would obviously have to contract with somebody ourselves. And so when we were speaking with them, we'd say we have an obligation of 2 additional months to take this on before that obligation ceases. And we would roll that into whatever contract that was, and it would be a short term, and it would remain the same. It would likely become a pass-through, so the revenue that we keep would go to whoever we were contracting with for that until we secured another full-time employee or decided what our future would be at that position.
Okay. And then can you remind me, I looked at this yesterday, but does this have an automatic rollover year to year, or is it revisited? Or it's just ongoing?
I don't know that it's necessarily an annual contract.
Mm-hmm. I believe it automatically renews.
Oh, here we go.
It says through March 31st.
Continue through March 31st, 25, and then automatically renew if there's no notice of termination, so, okay.
So we'll review the contract annually, ensure that it's covering our costs. And if it's not, we would either negotiate with them directly or provide notice of termination that we couldn't continue doing it. So it'll be set up in a separate revenue fund to track everything that's coming in, and then the payments that are going back out to the municipalities. So it'll be separated and segregated. So we'll be able to see both the workload and the financial aspects of the contracts. if they are to be accepted.
Sounds like a good plan. Any other questions, comments? So just to summarize then, in this resolution, we would be authorizing the city manager to share this proposed intergovernmental agreement with those 3 townships. You're indicating you're not intending to negotiate any of those terms, but that's would be our offer. And then if any of them agree to it, then we're authorizing you to sign those agreements.
Correct. So it will not change from what's before you tonight, other than, right now it reads as Jefferson. Each one will read, obviously, specific to the municipality that it's signed by.
Okay, great. And then please keep us informed if, who decides to go forward with that, assuming that this passes tonight. So any other questions or discussion? Okay, if not, let's have a roll call vote on Resolution 24-18, which is authorizing the city manager to execute an intergovernmental agreement for provision of building inspection services.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Let's see, item B is Resolution 24-19. This is authorizing the city manager to apply for congressionally directed spending. Misty, would you read that title for us, please?
City Council Resolution 24-19, authorizing the city manager to apply for congressional directed spending to support the library expansion project and Phase 1 of the Northside Development Plan.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve resolution 24-19, authorizing the city manager to apply for congressional directed spending to support the library expansion and Phase 1 of the Northside development.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Bishop, seconded by Ms. Quidnow. Mr. Daly.
Sure. So Senator Baldwin's office put out a solicitation for applications for congressionally directed spending, also known as earmarks, for the 2025 fiscal year budget. I have reached out to Congressman Fitzgerald's office as well to see if they are going to be advocating for any projects in their appropriation, in the House's appropriation processes as well, but have not heard back yet. These are 2 projects that staff identified. There's a memo attached that gives a brief summary. The Northside development infrastructure improvements are essentially the main cost included in those is bringing water across the interstate. There is a TIF district out there, has been for a few years now. That alone has not been adequate to spur development as it was created and intended for. And that's largely because the costs remain significant. So federal funding would allow us to hopefully expedite the process of seeing development in that TIF district. And add a lower cost to the city and the TID as well. The library expansion project, Gerard is here tonight if you have questions about the expansion project, but the library board has engaged with a fundraising consultant and has their preliminary plans completed. They've been discussing the budget for that project and are targeting an $8 million project. So this would be applying for funds in order to offset some of those costs for the city and the library. The application requires you to put a range of the lowest amount you would accept and still do the project, but then the amount that you would like to receive. So for each one, I've targeted 50% as the low amount to 80%. Typically, even the most generous of grants there's an 80-20 match requirement. So I'm requesting council support to submit these. I'd include the resolution that's before you tonight in the application, as well as invite any council members to offer letters of support, as well as library board members and other community members as well that may be interested in perhaps the school district or our county supervisors or others who may be interested in submitting letters of support. So they do give you that opportunity. And then I would go through the same process if Congressman Fitzgerald's office does submit any put in an application there as well. The Senator Baldwin actively sent out a solicitation, which is why that's the first one I'll be applying to, but we will seek support wherever we can get it.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Mrs. Bishop.
Mrs. Bishop.
Yes, Mr. Daly, does receipt of the funds obligate you to start a project?
I would have to ask them specifically. I believe you can still say, you could decline them. We have declined grants in the past. Typically, how the congressionally directed funding programs work is they will earmark a specific part of the budget within an existing federal program already and say that it's just designated for this project, and you still have to go through the federally outlined process of obtaining those funds, so we could decline to do so. I think for either of these projects, if we were awarded, especially the 80%, funding, I think it would certainly weigh on the city council's decision of whether to do the project or not. But we could decline. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not usually looked well upon when you turn away money that was advocated for, but the option would exist.
And I have a quick follow-up, if I may. If we receive the funds, what is the timeline that you have to use them by?
I don't think I'll be able to answer that until we know which program the funding is allocated to. Since it's not included in the budget, I don't know where it will be included.
Sure.
I can tell you that in New Glarus, we were awarded congressionally directed funding when I was still the village, after I left as the village administrator there in 2022. And they still are in the process of design and construction of it. So there is a number of years that is at least available to you if it is similar to that process.
Thank you.
And I have a follow-up to that. So this is for the next federal fiscal year, right? That would be starting on October 1. So when would we expect to hear a response to either of these?
I think we'll hear this summer if we don't get them, if they're not included in the appropriations that the senator puts forward, or if they don't make it out of committee. We won't hear if they're included in the final budget until there is a final budget, which is supposed to be done in October, but is never completed in October and is normally closer to end of November or Christmas. Obviously, there's there's political considerations as well within the whoever we're applying for. Senator Baldwin is up for re-election, so I imagine that will weigh on the success of that if the submittal is through her office. So we'd have to see. So I guess if that answers your question, December,
Sure. Okay.
Probably.
But, and if we don't receive it, we'll find out earlier and we can,
Usually.
move ahead accordingly.
Yeah, if it makes it through appropriations and then the federal government can't agree on a budget, then it could go into January, February. I think we're still working on our current budget at the federal level. I don't know. We'll see.
We won't find out unless we apply.
Right.
So, okay. Are there any other questions? Mr. Waters, did you have your hand up?
Mrs. Bishop asked my
Okay.
questions. so
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, so then we have a prepared resolution. Let's move to a roll call vote on Resolution 24-19, which is authorizing the city manager to apply for congressionally directed spending.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Fields,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, our next agenda item is Resolution 24-20, which is the 2024 Street and Sidewalk Maintenance Program. Misty, would you read that for us?
City Council Resolution 24-20 approving 2024 street and sidewalk maintenance plan.
I'll move to
motion?
approve Resolution 24-20, approving 2024 street and sidewalk maintenance plan.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Ms. Quidnow. Staff, Oh, we have a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. This presentation is probably very familiar. It's almost identical to last year when I presented it. We can give you the short version or the long version. Really, the length of the streets has not changed since last year. Dave, you can move to the next slide. This is our rating system. We've talked about that multiple times over the years. Next slide. This is just showing how the improvements of the maintenance program has helped the streets within the city. Next slide, please. This also shows, I didn't update it for 2023, but this shows the difference between 2016 and 2022. Exactly all the same slides as last year. Next slide, please. Again, some of the maintenance treatments for each of the costs and the ratings. I know it's a little hard to see, but if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer. Next slide, please. This shows what the program is all about. It's really trying to prolong the life of the streets with a 60-year life cycle. And this shows how we do that. We do that with cycles of chip seal, then to mill and overlay, and then ultimately to a number of cycles of that to reconstruction to try and extend that life to 60 years. With that, some of the street maintenance reminders, we're typically on a 7-year cycle. We are looking at chip seal in the streets that are rated 5 to 8, mill and overlay in streets that are 3 to 5, polarization in 2 to 4, and then total reconstruct on streets rated 1 to 3 and or if there are utility concerns below the street. Again, I kind of talked already about the 2 to 3 chip seal cycles before the first mill and overlay. And so that pretty much puts, if you have a new street, you're talking year 21 to year 28 before you're getting that mill and overlay. Next slide, please. Oh, could you go back one, Dave? Thank you. So this is this year's program. If we were on a 7-year cycle, any given year, we should be looking to try and get 4.8 miles of streets completed to stay on that 7-year cycle. Of course, that doesn't always happen because of the different types, what was the budget 7 years earlier, and what are the types of maintenance that we're anticipating doing in the given year. In 2024, we are currently proposing almost all chip seal in the program, 6.6 miles or 284 of the $300,000 budget. We do have a little bit of dollars available to do some work on Tower Street as the developer completes that cul-de-sac installation. So the total 1-year street activities for 2024 is projected at 6.6 miles and actually is approximately at a 5-year maintenance pace, which is actually better than our 7-year plan. Next slide, please. This is a budget history. We've added the 2023 to 300,000. In what you'll see is in 2017, there was over $1 million in the maintenance budget, and that was when this program in earnest was taken on. And so what happens is this year we have a much higher candidate list than we have dollars available. Dollars available is on the right side. There's $300,000 in the budget for street maintenance and $30,000 in 2 different accounts for sidewalk repairs that we'll talk about later. I believe that's the end of the presentation. Dave, can we move on to the next PDF, please?
As you're doing that, can I ask a question? So based on the dollars that you showed from the last 7 or 8 years, was there some kind of greater investment needed in the first couple of years of the program? Is that what you're saying, to sort of get it rolling? And then now is 300,000 plus or minus going to be fairly typical each year moving forward?
Exactly.
Okay.
Early on, it was let's catch up. Let's try to get it under control. So that we're not getting all those streets falling into that reconstruction zone. What it does do is it does give us what we're about to talk about. And that is this first slide, which is, and hopefully this answers that, is 24 street maintenance candidates. These are all the streets in green and in red that could be done this year based on the criteria. Well, $300,000 is not going to cover all of those streets. So with the help of Randy and Mark from the Streets Department, we did several tours, tried to narrow this list down to the 2024 list. Dave, could you slide to the next PDF, please? And through that work, we were able to reduce that candidate list down to the proposed. And what we tried to do in this area is we eliminated some of the higher rated streets that maybe could make one more year before a chip seal. We tried to group streets into neighborhoods so that the chip seal program was centralized in some areas, and then over time, on a 7-year cycle, neighborhoods would be done all in 1 year rather than a couple blocks this year and a couple blocks next year. So this is the proposed chip seal program. There is one street that's in red, and that's that Tower Street cul-de-sac that I talked about earlier. Next slide, please, or next PDF, please, Dave. This is the spreadsheet showing you all of those streets, our estimate on how that $300,000 splits among all those streets. I think the key thing here is in the upper left-hand corner, it really talks about the cost of the maintenance program. We all have to keep in mind that chip seal is estimated at $2 a square yard versus a mill and overlay, and I apologize, I need to bring up the same slide. A mill and overlay at $20 a square yard is our estimate, and pulverizing at $40, and then a total reconstruction of over $100 or well over $100 a square yard. So as you can see, we can do multiple chip seal programs before we even get to a mill and overlay cost. The spreadsheet shows what our estimate is. It also shows to try and show the difference between the cost of the chip seal that we've seen in the past and then the remaining funds that we use for repairing curb, doing some other patching in those streets before we chip seal. And the projection is that we are under budget at this time. We always analyze this as the year goes on, and if there are areas that we could patch that are outside of this list, we'll use some of those dollars to help maintain other streets throughout the city. Next slide, Dave. Would it be the council's preference to keep moving into the sidewalk, or should we discuss the street maintenance further?
Are there any specific questions on the street maintenance that people would like to raise?
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
So the next map is, as you know, our street maintenance, our sidewalk maintenance is $30,000, $15,000 in one budget, $15,000 in the another. What we look to do is we are moving in a counterclockwise direction throughout the city. We look for any complaints that have come in over the year that have not been addressed. We continue to take those throughout the year, and we do build a cushion into this presentation. So this year, actually, the street department has isolated areas just on Lake Street to cover much of that budget. And Dave, the next slide, please. And this slide shows those current areas, and it does show that we're still roughly $8,000 under budget to account for other complaints that come in throughout the year. Any other questions that I can answer tonight?
Any questions for Dwayne? Mrs. Bishop?
Hi, Dwayne. Yes, this map for the sidewalks includes part of Main Street. This is very specific, but I did receive a question about this. Part of the sidewalk on the Commons Park side was filled in last year with, it looks like, asphalt instead of concrete, I think. Is that going to be repaired with this, or is that not part of the project?
It is. So you'll notice on the screen, there's one row that's highlighted in blue. It's related to a water main break. It does not account against necessarily that budget because it's a water utility expense. I did keep it in the list because it was a sidewalk repair. So thank you for pointing that out.
And just to follow up on that, then, so the asphalt repair would have been a temporary fill just to maintain the sidewalk until the concrete work could be done.
Exactly.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, we don't typically do concrete work in the winter,
Right.
just because it's much more involved. You can do it, but it's much more involved.
Okay.
So it's more cost effective to temporarily patch with asphalt and come back.
I have a question on the sidewalk work, both for these plans and just in general. Is there ever any circumstance where repairing or redoing the sidewalk involves impacting street trees, where they would have to be removed or removed and replaced, for example?
Perhaps not right away, but if it's noticed that a sidewalk is continually being a problem or there's a heave coming from the root structures, then the tree gets evaluated as to whether it is tenable to remain, or if it's going to continue to either destroy the sidewalk or if the sidewalk repair will result in a root cut that makes the tree no longer viable. So the streets department then coordinates with the forestry division, and they make a determination on if the tree's viability is impacted or the structural integrity of it is impacted, that it becomes a fall risk or something like that, then that comes into play. So I think we're usually looking at heaves greater than 1 inch, certainly greater than 3 inches would be of concern if they're being caused by roots that are causing the heave of the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you. And so then it sounds like when the street work is being designed, or excuse me, the sidewalk work is being designed or prepared, if the streets crew identifies that there's going to be a concern with a particular tree, then the forestry staff are brought into the conversation before any final decisions are made about what to do there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on the proposed sidewalk and street maintenance plan for 2024? And I would note that the Public Works Board discussed this last week, is that right?
Yes, and they approved it last week as well, and made recommendations to come to this board, or city council.
Thank you. Okay, hearing no further discussion or questions, let's have a roll call, please, on Resolution 24-20, which is the 2024 Street and Sidewalk Maintenance Program.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Fields?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is Resolution 24-21, which is for Kayak rental service contract. Misty, would you read that title for us?
City Council Resolution 24-21, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Surf Shack Rentals for the provision of self-service kayak rentals at Sandy Beach Park for the 2024 season.
Thank you. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve Resolution 24-21, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Surf Shack Rentals for the provision of self-service kayak rentals at Sandy Beach Park for the 2024 season.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Fields, seconded by Mr. Waters. Mr. Clear, I notice we have Mr. Schreiner here.
Director Schreiner is online, or Attorney Drescher is available to answer questions about the specifics of the contract. This is essentially a renewal of the agreement that the city council entered into last year. That contract was not automatically renewing, as it was the first time we had provided a service like this, or entered into a contract to provide a service like this. So if we want to continue, we have to execute another contract.
Okay. Thank you. And we do have a memo from Director Schreiner, and it notes, and he recommends renewing, and that it was successful last year. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Mr. Waters?
No, Mr.
Oh,
Fields.
Mr. Fields, sorry.
I was just going to ask Mr. Schreiner if he'd just give us a quick overview and let us know if there were any issues from last year.
There were none whatsoever. There were a couple learning curves when it was first implemented, as far as people asking how to do it, and Surf Shack Rentals has been fantastic through the entire process. We don't do any maintenance required with the actual facilities that they have. So it's definitely fairly easy contractor to work with, and I would definitely recommend moving forward with Surf Shack Rentals. I had a lot of public correspondence supporting the actual availability of rentals at Sandy Beach. And I didn't have anybody other like contractors that wanted to actually pursue a contract with the city for the 2024 season. So I definitely recommend moving forward with Surf Shack Rentals.
Oh,
Just to follow up on there, is there any thought of adding anything like that at Bartles Beach also?
Eric, you're muted. I don't know what happened. It's not been brought to my attention to start something at Bartles Beach. I don't know that I think we would consider it if there was interest in doing so, but no one has brought to my attention that there's interest from the private company side of putting another one in at Bartles Beach.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Any other questions or discussion? All right. Seeing none, let's have a roll call vote on Resolution 24-21, which is authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Surf Shack Rentals for self-service kayak rentals at Sandy Beach Park.
Mr. Fields,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is Resolution 24-22, which is the Arbor Day Proclamation for this year. Misty, would you read that title for us?
City Council Resolution 24-22, Arbor Day Proclamation.
I move to approve Resolution 24-22, Arbor Day Proclamation.
Second?
Motion by Ms. Quidnow, seconded by Mr. Waters. We have a memo from Mr. Schreiner. Director Schreiner, would you like to say anything about this?
Absolutely. So this is a requirement of Tree City USA to have an official governmental body approve and recognize Arbor Day. And I would like to continue having City of Lake Mills represented as a Tree City USA community. So this is, I believe, the third year this has been a requirement to have official governmental body recognition. And if there's any further questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? Is it necessary for me to read the proclamation out loud?
It's not. You can choose to, but
Okay.
the official vote will be adequate.
Well, we're being very efficient tonight, so I think I'll pass, but people can review it online, and I think it's wonderful that we've been a Tree City for over 30 years, and it's actually, I think, kind of nice to have this come before us every year. It's just a good reminder that we are part of that program. Okay, any discussion or comments? Seeing none, let's have a roll call vote on Resolution 24-22, which is our 2024 Arbor Day Proclamation.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Fields.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is an update / decision on the City of Lake Mills TAP Grant project. Mr. Nader.
Sure. So you may have been a little surprised to see this one on the agenda tonight, but last Friday we had our pre-construction meeting on the TAP grant project. So just for a quick recap, the TAP grant was applied for in 2020. It was awarded. The city council approved the authorization to go out to bid in early 2023, awarded the project in mid-2023. It was originally slotted to begin construction in fall of 2023, but the weather pushed it into spring. So we had our pre-con meeting, and you may know this already, but since the approvals of the TAP grant and the process that the city council went through on that, was the creation of the Urban Forestry Committee. And so this is the project does include 2 streets that will require the removal of trees as the plans are designed. The most significant of which is Marguerite Street. There are 5 city-planted maple trees on Marguerite Street that are currently going to be lost, and then there is 1 tree that we've discovered that was planted privately within our right-of-way, so is still within our jurisdiction. Shouldn't have been planted there, but it is there now, likely planted sometime within the last 3 to 5 years based on its size. Then there's also 3 crab apples on Marguerite Street that would be impacted by the project. The maples range from 2 to 8 inch DBH, and the crab apples are at a DBH of 5, so they are not juvenile trees, but not yet fully mature as well. On Pope Street, there is 1 tree that there likely is, if a sidewalk is installed, there's likely nothing that could be done to avoid it based on its location. It's right in the middle of where the right of way is, and that is a fully mature 12 DBH honey locust. So I wanted to bring this specifically to the council's attention. We can apply for a change order with the DOT. Marguerite Street specifically is approximately a $44,000 piece of the project. $35,000 of that is covered by the federal grant. So we would be forfeiting that $35,000 and the 80% federally funded installation of the sidewalk. If we progress without removing Marguerite Street, there may be an opportunity on Marguerite for in the field design changes to attempt to mitigate any impact on the trees. It won't be successful on all of them. It'll be once it's staked, which is supposed to occur next week or shortly after, we'll be able to see exactly the amount of right-of-way we're working at. There's very limited right-of-way on Marguerite Street. It's possible that we could bring the sidewalk either fully to the curb, essentially, or back the sidewalk as far up to the property line as we can. No guarantee that those efforts would mitigate the loss of those trees during the construction phase. But Eric has gone out and looked at both streets and intends to be on site with forestry staff during that particular part of the project to determine if there's anything that can be done, if his staff can do hand root cutting or anything of that nature that may preserve those trees during construction. So this is the final opportunity. We can't delay this project any longer. The fiscal year will end, for this ends in June, at the end of June, at which case we would lose funding for the entirety of the project. So we can't delay. This obviously was approved by the city council, but at a different time, an earlier time. So I'm bringing it back to you for either a change in course or an affirmation of what was previously decided.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Waters.
On the Marguerite, where there was more trees, is there a plan to replace those trees if we were to remove them? What would that plan be?
Director Schreiner, can you walk them through what replacement looks like?
Yep, absolutely. So replacement of the trees was not considered as a line item within the project itself. But if a sidewalk is installed and creates a terrace, it is absolutely my department's priority to fill any potential gaps within a terrace area with trees as much as we can within a timely manner. So if there's any open vacancies within a terrace area, we'll do what we can to replace those trees as soon as possible with appropriate species. This is one of those issues to where Marguerite Street, I would have to see what is actually on site after completion of that project. Some certain things that come into play when planning planting is line of sight issues, potential setbacks from driveways or intersections with streets. But absolutely, if there's a vacant terrace, we'll do what we can to replace those trees.
So typically, when we follow a project, the next planting season for trees, that's the priority for when we do our tree planting. And then the goal is to replace as many trees as we removed, if not plant more, as long as it's safely possible.
Ms. Guedna?
Maybe I misheard you, but did this go through the ad hoc committee?
So the ad hoc committee's charge doesn't include review of construction projects.
Okay.
They're tasked with developing a policy for future street reconstruction projects and establishing a tree protection policy to potentially be included in future engineering specifications when we go out to bid. This was all completed before the creation of that committee.
Thank you.
Mr. Waters?
So I don't have the project in front of me, but Marguerite Street is an important connection to a neighborhood, to a central business district. So there is some balancing act here to look at, of course.
Is this, I believe on the screen now we can,
Oh, thank you.
as best as you can see, but yes, it is specific, Marguerite is specifically called out in the sidewalk plan that the city council currently operates under, and it does address a gap in the sidewalk. It connects two strips of existing sidewalk with a new sidewalk. So there's no sidewalk on the street currently, and it does provide that connection that does lead to that area.
Mrs. Bishop?
So I'm sorry, I can't read that, but I have Google Maps pulled up. This is the section of Marguerite Street that is between North Ferry and West Madison.
Correct.
Okay, so we're not touching the side of Marguerite that is west of North Ferry.
That's correct.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. That makes me feel better about this.
I have a couple of, I guess, comments slash questions. This is in my neighborhood, and I walk on the street fairly regularly to get over toward the lake. And I recall, so I looked at these plans pretty closely when we were going through this process. And as I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, but the south side, neither side of the street has sidewalk now. And the south side, I believe, had too much of a hill to meet ADA requirements. So there's actually, if that side would have worked, there would have been fewer trees impacted, but it didn't work for other reasons in terms of slope and ADA accessibility. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. We did also reach out to the DOT to see if we could shrink the size of the sidewalk to 4 feet. But when creating new sidewalk, 4 foot is not considered ADA compliant. It's only ADA compliant if you're replacing an existing 4-foot sidewalk. So that is not, that wasn't an option for us, but you're correct. There were grading issues on the other side of the street that prevented us from being able to either do sidewalks on that side of the street or contemplate whether they should have gone on both sides of the street.
Okay, okay. As I said, I use it regularly. I see a lot of people use it regularly, and it's not safe because you're not on a sidewalk. You're not, you don't have that protection. So it definitely is a gap, that's been identified in our plan for a lot of years. I'm not keen on, trees coming down. I think we all have such greater awareness about this as we're thinking about projects moving forward. We created a committee to actually look at this. I guess I am in favor of continuing to move forward with the project as planned because I don't think we're going to get a sidewalk on Marguerite Street unless we go forward with this grant. If we pull this part out of the project, I don't see the city finding its own funds to do a sidewalk here anytime soon. So this is an opportunity that we have with this TAP grant to fill in a lot of gaps. And so I would be really disappointed if we didn't take advantage of that opportunity for this street section as well. Is there any more discussion, questions, comments? So I guess I had one other question slash comment. So Drake, you indicated that this was during a pre-construction meeting that this was identified. Do you think that, and this is a sidewalk project, so it's not exactly the same as the street reconstruction. We don't often do new sidewalks in these gaps, so it's not a common thing that would be before us. But is there something that we can do or that we're already doing to involve the forestry team, earlier in projects like these?
Yeah, we already are. And I don't know that they weren't involved at the time of, the design and grant application back in 2020. But we are involving the forestry division in design decisions and things of that nature. They're involved on the front end as well as evaluating trees for health related concerns. And if there's a street reconstruction project coming up, and there's a tree on the list of, dead or dying, those are removed prior. But we will include them going forward on, are there mitigation efforts that can be done? Is there any type of efforts that they can undertake? What can be done? So they're involved in the conversation on when we're in the design phase of street reconstruction.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that, you and the forestry department have been being more, trying to be more proactive and being involved earlier in projects. And unfortunately, this was one that just started enough earlier before we were all paying as much attention to trees. Any other, Mr. Waters?
I guess I just wanted to thank the staff for bringing this up at City Council. I guess my thought is if nobody makes a motion tonight to change anything, that we would just move forward as planned, so.
Yep, that's certainly true. The council could make a motion to proceed as planned as well if you wanted to. Either one will continue on with the plans as they are previously approved.
So if there's no motion, the project will move forward with, as originally planned, and we understand from Mr. Schreiner that he'll be looking for opportunities to offset the loss of trees on both of these streets. Any further discussion? Okay, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Appreciate it. So the next item is recommendations for future agendas. Mr. Daly, do you have anything on your list?
I don't. I guess I would just note I will be out of the office next week.
Okay.
That would be.
Spring break, so probably a lot of people are going to be off or away. Anything from council members? I know we have some things coming our way, but maybe not at the very next meeting in terms of Sandy Beach Park, RFP on contractors, but that's not till May, I don't think, so. Okay, well, we'll just see what awaits us next meeting. Okay, so our next agenda item is to convene into closed session to discuss the city manager performance review pursuant to section 19.85, parentheses 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Can I get a motion to convene into closed session?
So moved?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Waters, seconded by Mr. Field. All in favor, raise your hand. That's a 5-0. So we will convene into closed session off camera. We'll reconvene off camera and then adjourn. So that closes this televised portion. Thank you.